So good afternoon. My name is Christina Gauthier. I am the Public Relations Coordinator for Pera's Albuquerque Satellite Office, and I'm here today at the Albuquerque Housing Authority to discuss the Pera benefits that are offered to newly hired employees. And so Pera officially during the 2013 legislative session was split into two tiers. And so this is the current color scheme version of our two-tier books. The green book is Tier 1, the purple book is Tier 2. But currently at the press is our new editions of these booklets, and so they're going to have a different color scheme. It's more of a goldenrod yellow and a tealish kind of green, and so those will actually be available on our website. Our website address is actually on the back cover of these booklets for you, and so I think the new versions are actually up on the website as of today. You can go to the website and download the new versions. Only a handful of things changed between the printed version that you have now and the updated version, and so you don't have to waste a tree. If you are just looking for a different colored book, then you are welcome to download the newer version from our website. I'm only going to hold up one book because I'm not an octopus. Pretty exciting times. And so I will keep you abreast of the page number that I am working with in the booklet. Officially, we are on page 5 in both the Tier 1 and Tier 2 booklets. This lovely page gives you a map and a picture and physical address, contact information for Pera's Santa Fe office, which is our main office, up off of Cerrillos Road. The email address on this page goes to a dear friend of mine, Tricia Thaxton. She's our liaison officer up in our Santa Fe office, and she answers all of the general inquiries that come to that email address. On page 6 is contact information for Pera's Albuquerque office, and since you are all based out of Albuquerque, I'm presuming, since you work for the Albuquerque Housing Authority, you are welcome to come by and visit our office at any time, keeping in mind that the office does close daily from noon to 1 for lunch. Right now, as of today's date, I understand our new lease has been signed. We are literally moving from suite 420 to suite either 410 or 400. It's literally across the hall, and so when you get off the elevators, we are going to be that suite that's directly off the elevators, and so that won't be, as we understand it as of today, until the start of the year. So in 2016, we will be in a new suite, but it's still the same floor, still the same address, and you are welcome to visit us to ask any questions related to your retirement benefits, because even though the lovely folks that you work for are very knowledgeable concerning your benefits, only Pera staff can tell you exactly where you stand and exactly how your benefits apply to your specific situation. So we encourage you to reach out. The email address on this page goes straight to me and only me, and so that goes with me everywhere that I travel, business related, and then I have the horrible habit of taking my work cell phone with me on personal vacations on occasion, and so I still respond from those as well. We were adopted as the state's retirement plan way back in 1947, and at that time we were developed as a defined benefit plan, which means when we retire you, everyone who retires from the Albuquerque Housing Authority is retired using the same formula, regardless of how many years you've worked. It's the same formula: years and months of service, plan, pension factor, and your final average salary. And so we'll talk more about that in detail as we go forward, but we are a defined benefit plan for Pera purposes, and for IRS purposes, we are a 401A as an apple. Pera is governed by a board made up of representatives from state and municipalities, retirees, Secretary of State, the State Treasurer's Office, and so we have a body of individuals who represent us as the membership on our board. Pera is also a trust fund, which means it's protected by lots and lots of laws and rules. No one can come in and dip their fingers into it trying to balance a budget. This money is held in trust for all of us as the membership, and so we are very, very proud to have that in place in New Mexico. On page 8, we talk about the two benefit tiers, and so this is where we get into the difference in between the two books. In the 2013 legislative session, Pera was divided into the two tiers. If you were actively employed with a Pera-related agency on June 30th of 2013, you are officially Tier 1. If you were not actively employed, but you had a positive balance of service credit contributions in your bucket as of June 30th of 2013, you are forever Tier 1. If a member was already retired with PERA, they are forever Tier 1. If you don't meet one of those 3 requirements, automatically you are Tier 2. If you worked for a Pera affiliate prior to June 30th of 2013, but when you separated, you requested a refund of your bucket of contributions and had a 0 balance on June 30th, 2013, returning to work after that date, you are Tier 2, even if you buy back the time from the previous period of employment. Additionally, if you are an employee of the Educational Retirement Board, you're covered under APS, UNM, CNM, anything covered under the Educational Retirement Act, and you are moving to a Pera affiliate July 1st of 13 or later, you are Tier 2. Your status with the Educational Retirement Board does not automatically make you a Tier 1 member at Pera. Your hire date does. So you want to make sure that you understand the difference between the tiers. Your employer cannot tell you which tier you fall under. You need to follow up with Pera if you are unsure. This page also covers membership. If you are being hired into a part-time or full-time permanent position at your employer, you are by law required to participate in Pera and make the applicable contributions based on your salary. Exclusions from Pera membership involve the statuses that you see here on page 8 in the member handbook. If you are hired as a student employee, elected official, your entity was not a Pera affiliate at the time you hired on and later affiliated, you can exclude at the time the employer affiliates. If you are hired as part-time, someone who is going to work less than 20 hours a week consistently throughout the course of their employment, you can be excluded from Pera membership. Also, if your entity had offered a private retirement prior to this point, or if you are working for the New Mexico Aging and Long-Term Services Department as a trainee, or if you are duly employed with a Pera and an ERB entity, you can officially exclude yourself from Pera membership, because if you were employed with ERB first, by law you have to exclude yourself out of Pera membership. And so this and contract employment, something that is not an employee of the agency, can be excluded from Pera membership. If you have questions about your status, start first with your HR person, and then you can always follow up with PERA. When you become a member, you are actually assigned a Pera ID number, which is covered at the top of page 9. The Pera ID number can be anywhere from 1 to 6 digits, and it's unique to you. And so once you have your Pera ID number, which is sent to you on an annual member statement, or you can actually look it up using our self-service feature on our website, that ID number is specific to you and should be used in lieu of your Social Security number. Your member account information is verified in a couple of different ways. Every fall, Pera sends out an annual member statement. We're actually in the process of verifying those letters as we speak, and so those should be going out hopefully no later than the first week of October. And so once you get that statement, I promise you it's not junk mail. We actually expect you to open it up, look through it, and make sure the information in that letter is accurate. Your service credit looks good, your beneficiary information, because the only way we know something is incorrect, whether it's a typo in spelling or you're missing a portion of your service credit, the only way we're going to know is if you get in touch with us, because we're using the information sent to us from your employer, and sometimes there's a hiccup and we need your help to make sure the information is correct. If you don't want to wait till once every fall, you have the ability to enroll for a self-service account via Pera's website. And so I referenced our website on the back cover of these publications. You actually have the ability to visit Pera's website, click on the green button in the upper left-hand corner, and create a user ID and password that works for you, and you can actually log in once a month and watch your little bucket of contributions grow. You can stay on top of your contact information, review your beneficiary information. You can, once you are vested, look into the cost of airtime service credit as you near retirement. You can actually calculate your retirement benefits. So it has lots of useful tools for you. I will warn you, however, that your self-service username password, specifically the password, expires every 120 days if you are not logging in regularly. So if you haven't logged in within 120 days of establishing the account, you're going to have to remember your secret question and answer, or you can contact Pera for assistance in resetting that password. All right. On to page 10. Vesting. These are where the two books actually differ a little bit. Folks who are Tier 1 in the Green Book vest after 5 years of service credit. Our Tier 2 family members in the Purple Books will vest after 8 years of service credit. Lots of times members ask me, well, what does it really mean to vest? Vesting in this retirement system means that you are guaranteed a lifetime retirement benefit. Once you have the appropriate number of birthdays to coincide with your years of service credit, you have the ability to draw a pension once a month for the rest of your lifetime. So that's the biggest deal about vesting. Additionally, a vested member can actually purchase service credit to help speed up their retirement date or to enhance their overall retirement benefits. So a handful of our service credit types require vested membership status before you're eligible to make a purchase. Beneficiary information is a pretty big deal, and that's found on page 11. My very first Pera-related employer, I had actually interned with them when I first hired on because I was still finishing up at UNM. And once that was all said and done, they told me, you have to apply. You have to come work for this entity. We want you to come and work here. And so while I sat through new employee orientation at that agency, they actually pulled me aside and specifically told me, do not name your boyfriend as your beneficiary, which I thought was horribly rude, right? And so now that I work for Pera, I kind of get it. And so what this page talks about is what happens if you pass away before you can retire. If you happen to pass away before you vest, before you reach either 5 or 8 years, whatever contributions are in your bucket from your biweekly payments out of your paycheck, whomever you've designated as your refund beneficiary is eligible to receive a one-time lump sum refund of whatever you paid in and interest less taxes. Once you are vested, you have the ability to leave behind a survivor benefit. And so, upon hire, you are going to fill out both a refund and survivor beneficiary designation. If you are a Tier 1 member and you're hiring over to the Housing Authority, they're going to ask you to recomplete your beneficiary form to ensure that their files are complete at the time of an audit. And so, for our purposes, if something happens, you pass away, after you are vested, the one person you've named as your survivor beneficiary is actually entitled to lifetime pension payments in your name. The other part of survivor benefits has to do with passing away before you vest if your death is duty related. Some of us find it hard to believe that somebody who works in an office all day would have a duty related death, but this is a scary world. It's been for some time, and so anything could happen anywhere, and if you happen to pass away and your death is duty related, whether or not you're vested, your beneficiary has a survivor's benefit waiting for them. All right, on to page 12. We talk about contributions. Earlier I mentioned that contributions are mandatory if you are deemed Pera eligible by your employer and your employment status. Those contributions are paid in biweekly. Every 2 weeks when your employer pays you, they withhold your Pera contributions pre-tax, and they are remitted to us through our software. Those contributions actually earn interest every June 30th at a rate set by Pera's board. And so for our purposes, your bucket's not just sitting there stagnant other than the biweekly contributions. You actually earn compounding interest. And as of this past 3 years now, the interest rate is set at 2% and it compounds. And so the remainder of the topics on this page, specifically we are going to point out refunding member contributions. Members come to us all the time and they say, well, I no longer work for that entity. What are my options? Members actually have the ability to take a one-time lump sum refund of their contributions, but I never recommend it because you have paid into Pera pre-tax. The IRS upfront, if you request a refund of your contributions, immediately say, well, we want our taxes out of that bucket, and we are required by law to withhold 20% in federal taxes. The state shows up next and says, well, you're taking that out, we want our taxes, which is another 8.5% of that balance. If you're under the age of 59.5 by IRS standards, you're going to pay an additional 10% penalty on the total balance when you file your taxes the year after the distribution. So we never recommend a member take their member contributions strictly for the taxes and penalties alone. But additionally, for our membership who do this, Without fail, 95% of them come back and they say, well, I wish I would have never done that. It was a horrible mistake, because when you return later, you're starting over at zero. You've taken out all of the contributions tied to your previous service credit, and you're starting over at zero. So you want to make sure that if you have another opportunity waiting for you somewhere else, that you allow your monies to remain on account. Even if you never return, they're growing interest, and you have the ability to draw on them later. But we do not allow partial refunds. You can roll it to another retirement account to defer the taxes and penalties. But for our purposes, most everyone comes back. Even if they move out of state, they come back. And so that has a lot to do with the fact that our retirement system is ranked top 5 in the nation. And so this is a really good place to be. On to page 14 and 15. Officially, you only need page 14. If you have a writing utensil, you are officially members of Municipal Plan 3 as employees of the Albuquerque Housing Authority. This page tells you what contribution is being paid in by you as the employee and your employer. Ironically, the Housing Authority is actually, and it's not ironic, they've done a really great service to their employees. They have actually passed a resolution, filed it with Pera, picking up 75% of these contribution rates that you see here. So whether you are making less than $20,000 annually or you're making more than $20,000 annually, your entity is picking up 75% of what you are responsible for, and the full percentage you see here based on your salary is actually depositing into your bucket every 2 weeks. So you're getting free retirement money from your employer every 2 weeks being added to your bucket. In addition, your employer is paying to Pera the employer contributions referenced in the appropriate column. Those monies are completely non-refundable. So if you decide to leave, your bucket can be paid out to you, interest, taxes, penalties. The employer contributions are never available for refund. The only way to benefit from them is to officially stick around and retire, because once all of your bucket is paid out to you during the course of your retirement, we move on to the employer contributions and Pera's fund as a whole to sustain you for the rest of your lifetime. The next column talks about a pension factor, which is kind of a foreign term if you know nothing about retirement. Other retirement systems we work with and speak to actually call this number an annual multiplier, which makes better sense to me. It's an easier picture to draw, because what that tells me is that for every year of service, we're going to take that percentage and multiply it by that year of service. And so for Pera's purposes, the Tier 1 and Tier 2 books vary slightly. Tier 1 members earn 3% per year. Tier 2 members earn 2.5% per year. And then the final column talks about a pension maximum. For those of us who are Tier 1, we are very familiar with the previous plan maximum, which was 80%, 26 years and 8 months. That is absolutely still out there. But for those individuals who want to stick around beyond that marker and possibly stay to 30 or more years, at 30 years of service credit, Tier 1 members have the ability to walk away with 90%. For our Tier 2 family, it actually takes 36 years to get to 90% if you are willing to stick around that long and make the 90% marker. Lots of members tell me that I'm barely crawling to the finish line. How do you expect me to work 36 years? And then on the opposite end of that scale, I met somebody who had 42 years of service at a housing authority somewhere south. And so it's really all about glass half empty, glass half full, what you have in you, what you're willing to put into the retirement system. So it's, absolutely doable if you choose to. If not, we'll talk about how to retire at your earliest opportunity a little bit later. Earning service credit is covered on page 16. This is the one place that I'm absolutely positive. This book will vary from the new printed versions because this book was prepared before we made some changes to our part-time rule. And so, if I remember correctly, Nita has mentioned that there aren't a lot, if any, of part-time employees with the Housing Authority. So for general purposes, if you are a full-time employee, the first couple of paragraphs cover your earning service credit rules. The first involves your hire date. If you are hired on or before the 16th day of the month, you've met the first requirement for service credit. Every month from the first to the last, you have to earn a minimum of 80 hours each and every month to retain service credit. In the month you decide to give up your day job, if you give up your day job before the 15th day of the month, you are not going to earn service credit for that month, even if you have the 80 hours, because the date is what ties you in your last month of employment. So it's really important as a full-time employee to make sure that if you can help it, don't leave before the 15th day of the month, whether you're retiring or whether you've just had it up to here or you're leaving for another opportunity. Make every effort not to leave before the 15th day of the month. For our part-time members, for the purposes of this video, I believe we are going to have our part-time members contact Pera to find out how and when they earn service credit, because it's kind of tricky. It has to do with vested status as of June 30th of 2014. The new handbook will have it all spelled out in writing for you, but since we don't have any part-time members in this room, I am going to leave that for future research for any part-time employees. The Albuquerque Housing Authority does not have any municipal detention officers, so they do not qualify for enhanced service credit. So the right-hand side of page 16 and the top of page 17 do not apply in the current version of the handbook. I mentioned earlier about the refunded service credit and how that affects taking out your contributions and leaving zero service credit on the books. For those individuals who did not receive words of wisdom, like leave that alone, don't touch it, you're going to come back, we promise you'll come back. Those individuals who took out their bucket of contributions, who have a zero balance now, but want to look into paying back that time so that they can possibly retire sooner instead of later, have the ability to purchase the service credit. And we cover that topic on page 18 in the green book, page 16 in the purple book. There is a bulleted list in this segment that shows you the interest rates that were covered over a course of several years. And so as you can see, these interest rates have changed over the course of the years. If you took out your time, I don't know, this morning we worked on a calculation. Somebody took out their time in the 1960s, 1968 to be exact, nearly 50 years ago. And they want to know how much it's going to cost to buy that time back. We calculated the person took out $50. It was going to be $1,800 to pay it back. My recommendation, don't waste the money for those 3 months of service credit. Wasn't going to really help the member. They're paying tons of compounding interest. It is absolutely not in that individual's best interest to make that investment since they qualify to retire without it. But you have to decide for yourself if that's an investment that would be wise for your situation. We will, give you all of the facts and figures and tell you how it would affect you. But before you give us any money, make sure you understand what that purchase means, particularly if you are Tier 2. For our members who serve active duty military prior to employment, those individuals have the ability to purchase that active duty military service credit toward their para retirement. On page 18 in the green book, page 17 in the purple book, you can actually see an example of the cost calculation. It's based on the employee and employer contributions for Municipal Plan 3, specific for Albuquerque Housing Authority employees, and then the average of your high 36 consecutive months of salary if you're Tier 1, high 60 consecutive months of salary if you're Tier 2. And so those factors all work together to help generate the cost of 1 month of service credit. In this instance, you have to be vested to make a military service credit purchase. For our members interested in purchasing withdrawn service credit, you actually don't have to be vested. You're actually eligible to purchase your withdrawn service credit from the time you rehire. And so military service credit requires vested status as well as airtime. Airtime literally comes from taking service credit out of thin air and adding it to your retirement bucket. It has nothing to do with any period of employment that is specific. It's literally just 12 months of service that you can purchase and add to your account. The cost of airtime is based on 4 factors. It's based on your plan. So everybody at the Housing Authority falls under Municipal Plan 3. After that, everybody's factors are different because we're looking at your age at the time of hire. We're looking at the average of your high 36 or 60 consecutive months of salary based on your tier. And then we're looking at where you stand in terms of service credit. As a general rule, if you've had more birthdays, more raises, more service, your airtime is more expensive. So it could be beneficial to look into buying that time the second you're vested. That being said, I don't ever encourage anyone to buy airtime. Airtime for me is your last-ditch effort to get out. If you're buying your airtime, you have a retirement plan, obviously, because you're buying yourself out of your retirement, or you're buying yourself out of a year of work, basically. That's what you're doing when you buy a year of airtime. And so if you don't know what you're doing at the end of your career and you've bought yourself out of this great job that you love, was that a wise investment? So you have to decide, and no one has a crystal ball, so unfortunately I can't tell you if it's a great idea or not. I will tell you though that military and airtime can be purchased in monthly increments, and so you have the ability to buy a month here, a month there, as you can afford it. Or if you're having a bad 6 months at work and you think, I can't do this, I need to get out sooner, you can start buying that time 1 month at a time, and it will be added to your bucket. But you have to have enough money to purchase a minimum of 1 month. You can't make biweekly payments to Pera. You can, however, make biweekly payments to the deferred comp provider that the Housing Authority has made arrangements for you all to utilize. So you have the ability to put away pre-tax dollars into another retirement account that will help you pay for your time with Pera if you choose.
Do people typically buy a year of airtime so they can retire a year early to take care of an elderly parent?
Oh, good question. So is it common for members to buy a year of airtime to retire sooner so that they can take care of, an ailing parent or an ailing family member? It often is. I have a relative who did specifically that. We have members who buy a year of airtime because they have another job lined up and they want to get to that job sooner than later. I have a member now who is expecting their first grandchild that they thought they'd never have. They're retiring, buying a year of airtime so they can be home and take care of that grandchild. And so everybody's reasons are different. I love my job so much, I can't imagine buying myself out a year early. If I get to the end and I'm like, okay, I can't travel anymore, I can't handle the, whatever it is, then maybe, but I think if you don't love your job, you should find a different one. If it's a personal reason, financial, ailing loved one, something for you, then you should absolutely, take it into consideration because it is an opportunity for you to move on to the next stage in life. So, in terms of requesting the information that we just discussed, withdrawn service credit, airtime, military service credit, there's actually a Pera request form available on our website. There is also a version of the form included in this book. It's on page 47 in the green book, 45 in the purple book, and the types of purchases we discussed are listed toward the bottom. Check boxes, they all begin with purchase, and they're pretty self-explanatory: airtime, military, withdrawn. So pretty easy to follow along with on the request form. And of course, you can always send an email to Pera and say, this is what I am hoping to learn. And generally, unless you have to provide a DD-214 form related to your military service credit purchase, you can pretty much get away with asking us nearly anything on the email, and you don't have to submit the extra form. So you should normally pretty good. We are going to skip over to retirement eligibility to button up the last portion of this NEO presentation, new employee orientation presentation. We are on page 25 in the green book, 24 in the purple book. And so, in terms of retirement eligibility, Tier 1 members of the Albuquerque Housing Authority actually qualify under the 25-year retirement plan that's listed at the top of the page. If you have 25 years of service credit, regardless of your age, you actually qualify for retirement. And so if you started fresh out of high school, you can retire when you're 43, potentially. And so if this is your second career, or you did something else completely and now you are starting your career a little bit later but before June 30th or no later than June 30th of 2013, there are some other age and service markers spelled out at the bottom of this particular segment. And so the minimum requirement for a Tier 1 Municipal Plan 3 member is 65 birthdays and 5 years of age. So as long as you have 65 birthdays and 5 years of service credit, you are actually eligible to retire. There are several markers in between which are available on Pera's website in this handbook, or you can contact us, but you have to have the right number of birthdays and years of service credit on one line in this requirement to be eligible. You can't be 30-something and have 5 years and expect to start drawing a retirement benefit. That's not the way that works, or it's not intended to work. That being said, if you, let's say, have 5 years of service credit, you win the Mega Million jackpot tomorrow night or sometime in your future, you absolutely have the ability to walk away, leave your service credit on account. As long as you're vested, you can come back when you've had the appropriate number of birthdays and make an application to draw a retirement, which we call a deferred retirement. You're earning the service credit here and you're deferring drawing it at a later date when you're actually eligible based on age and service credit requirements. So you do have that ability if you have another opportunity, you won the lottery, you just can't foresee working for the government forever, you have the ability to leave it on account. It'll continue to grow interest and you can come back and draw the retirement at a later date. For our Tier 2 members, it's a little bit different. For a Tier 2 family, you need to meet one of two requirements. The minimum is 8 years of service credit and 65 birthdays. So if you leave before you have 8 years of service credit, and you never return, your only option is to refund your contributions or roll them to another retirement account. But as long as you get to that 8-year minimum and you have 65 birthdays, you're eligible to draw a deferred pension. The way to qualify before 65 years of age is to meet what is called the Rule of 85. Pera's definition of Rule of 85 is solid years of age plus solid years of service credit added together need to equal 85. So if you had 25 years of service credit and you had 60 birthdays, you would be eligible because the two added together equals 85. And so for a member just starting out today or who started a year ago, trying to figure out as a Tier 2 member when they might first be eligible to draw a retirement benefit, the easiest way to figure out that calculation is to take the number 85, subtract your age at the time of hire. When you get that result, you're going to divide it by 2, and that gives you the approximate number of years you need to work before you're retirement eligible. And so that's a great way to estimate it. It's not spot on for everyone because Pera doesn't take into consideration half years of service. It has to be whole years of age, whole years of service credit, adding together to equal 85. But overall, that is the general principle behind Rule of 85, and then of course the minimum requirement of 8 years of service and 65 birthdays. For the purposes of new employee orientation, the only other tidbit that I'm going to cover is disability retirement. It's really important for everyone to understand that they are eligible and covered under Pera's Disability Retirement Act from their first date of hire if their injury or illness is actually caused by their job. So if somebody has an on-the-job injury or an illness caused by their job, they are covered from their first day of employment, even if they're not vested. If somebody has an illness, an injury, they're diagnosed with a disease, they get injured outside of work, they cannot perform the functions of their job, they have the ability to apply for a non-duty disability benefit once they are vested, 5 years or 8 years, depending on their tier. And so the requirements are very different for that particular provision, but it's important to note that during new employee orientation, you actually have an additional benefit offered under PERA. So for the purposes of new employee orientation, I think that covers all of the general topics. If you have any questions, obviously reach out to your human resources staff, and if they don't know, they will absolutely contact me or another member of Pera's staff to get you the answers you need. Of course, you're always welcome to reach out to us directly via any of our contact methods, and so on behalf of Pera, we'd like to welcome you to our family.
So what are some of the most common reasons for people to file for a work-related disability on the job injury? Is it, for example, a car crash?
So for non-public safety, it's any range of things. Some people have, severe carpal tunnel that has left them completely debilitated. It's very, very interesting and difficult for somebody who has a typical office job to be qualified for a duty-related disability. Right. It's usually somebody who's doing physical work, somebody who's a laborer, somebody who is public safety. Exactly. Yeah. So, they're working and somebody opens the door, knocks them off a ladder, and they break their back, heaven forbid. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so something like that is much easier to prove to our disability review committee than somebody who is sitting in an office all day.